Croeso nôl to the Fearless in Devotion podcast, the Wrexham AFC podcast sponsored by the Fat Boar Bar and Restaurant. No Tim or Andy this week. Tim's on his way back from Armenia. Do we know where Andy's on his way back from? He's on a plane. That's all we know.
Is he on his way to Istanbul or on his way back? I don't know.
No one ever knows. He's never at home. That's all we know. So you're stuck with me, Liam, and Tomi for now. But we do have a very special guest coming up for you in a few minutes on this podcast. Before that, though, let's digest a very disappointing weekend football-wise for both Cymru and Wrexham. Defeats for the men and women. I've just got back from the Swansea.com stadium. Disappointing result there. But on Saturday, a wet and cold 2-0 away loss at Accrington, Stanley. Big top red points to those of you who made the trip up. It looked horrible. Tomi, you were one of them. Not much to shout about.
Absolutely nothing to shout about. It was one of the grimmest afternoons I've had in a long, long time. It was a bit of a throwback, actually, to the dark days. But, it just never got going. Never got going. I still say we could be playing now, we wouldn't score. I even joked when we got the penalty. I said, at least we'll have a shot on target now. And we didn't. So, that's pretty much sums it all up, I think.
Yeah, I think it does. Liam, you were watching like me, I suppose, on the screen. It just one of those days, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just feeling drained by the end of it. It was one of those games of football, not really pretty to watch. One of those reminders that you sort of need every once in a while that we're not indestructible, but just everything about it was really frustrating, from the referee. I'm not going to have too much of a go at Accrington's tactics because they played to their strengths and we struggled to match them. So, but yeah, it was a tough game to watch. Not a tenner that I'd spend again if I knew what was coming up, to be honest.
No, yeah, that was grim. And we do have some reaction from Tim as well, who sent us a voice note. So here's some of Tim's opinions on the game.
Yeah, 2-0, rubbish. I've looked at the penalties. I think both are stonewallers. I think people...
What?
For the penalty given against us, but I think for me it's the Will Boyle challenge on their manager bundles him over, so gives the referee an easy decision to make. I think the penalty on Evans is a stonewaller as well, and it's just one of those days when Mullin smashes against the bar, just like he did from open play earlier in the game. So it's one of those, it's first defeat in 12. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of the run. And hopefully the start of another one will begin this Saturday. We're really still in a good position. We found our feet. We got caught a little bit yesterday in terms of the physicality at Accrington. Glad to see they've won the Champions League, though, against Wrexham yesterday. Some outstanding celebrations. I really hope all their many thousands of fans turn up for the rest of the season and celebrate immensely against every other team that goes there.
Yeah, big celebrations up for Accrington. And there's a bit more to come from this as well, because listeners last week will remember Tim's song for Arthur Okonkwo. And we regret to inform you that he's been at it again. He ran a poll to find out what song you guys wanted to fit with an Arthur Okonkwo chant. So he sent us another voice note. And here's that.
For some bizarre reason, 40% of you, and there's only about 300 or 400 votes, thankfully, so maybe that's telling me something, have opted to go for Aqua and Barbie Girl. So I've got to do Arthur Okonkwo in that song. Now, bearing in mind, I'm sending this off my phone in deepest, darkest Armenia. I don't have a backing track to go along with, so you're just going to have to put this to the music or imagine it in your head. So, right, this is horrendous, by the way. Please don't give me too many pelters because I know it's shit, but I've had to think on the spot about the lyrics for this one. So here we go. Right, okay, I'm readying myself for this. Okay. Arthur Okonkwo, he plays in Wrexham's goal. He's fantastic, rarely drastic, plays with lots of flair, makes saves from everywhere. Our fascination, we've still got Rob Lainton. There you go, I told you it was pretty shit. That's what happens when people catch you on the spot. Anyway, as we had a dismal day for both Wrexham and Wales yesterday, I'll bust you out my shitty Chesney Hawk songs to I Am the One and Only. Anyway, how does that go again? Arthur Okonkwo, the goalkeeper for you and me. Arthur Okonkwo, He's got big hands. He's 6'3". Technically, he's 6'6", but you can see where I had to go from to rhyme it. Anyway, this is almost 5 minutes of my utter nonsense. Sorry for.
I have to cut him off early because I'm lost for words.
I really hope he gets waterboarded by the Armenian authorities while he's over there after that. So
I'm growing increasingly concerned that Tim is in need of a serious intervention, but I think the less said about that, the better. Let's talk a bit more about the game. I mean, Tomi, obviously having two left wing backs out, how did Jordan play? Was it obvious that we were that was affected our system?
Yeah, I think it definitely affected us. I don't think Jordan had a bad game. I think Jordan's one of those players he can slot in anywhere, can't he? But 100% affected us big time. It's just one of those performances, really. Yesterday, I sort of looking back at it now and just sort of you almost can't describe it after how well we've been playing. To go to places like Mansfield and Notts and get pick up wins there. And all of a sudden we go to Accrington. Don't get me wrong, Accrington are a good side. I think Liam's right there as well. They've got a system. They're very effective. But yeah, really, really disappointing. And I hate to go back to how much money, how much of a budget we've got and stuff like that. But really, it's not really acceptable to put in performances like that. I don't want to be too harsh on the players who've been excellent for us, but that's not good enough. That can't happen again, really. That's two really, really bad performances on the road after the Stockport game now. Fingers crossed, lessons are learned, and we get back on a run again.
Yeah, let's hope we can turn that around quite quickly. Liam, some afters with Accrington's boss on Twitter as well, Andy Holt, wasn't there? And also a police appeal for Vapes being thrown at their keeper.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of vapes anyway, to be honest. I think cigarettes are more honest because you know what you're going to get. You don't get someone sort of blowing blueberry in your face or something like that. But yeah, unpleasant scenes that we hate to see. I think the referee actually took them over as evidence to the fourth official. So he had several vapes in his hand and various bits and bobs. So we don't want any of that. In terms of Andy Holt, I thought, that pretty much as soon as that tweet went out yesterday where we were rubbing it in a bit, saying we were going to cut prices by a £5 when they come to our place, I just knew we were going to lose from the minute I saw that tweet, pretty much. And then he's been going on ever since they won Accrington 2, Hollywood 0. I think Ryan Reynolds should cut prices by a tenner. Safe journey home, folks. Get that on Netflix, Ryan, lad. Wow. And he's pretty much not stopped since then, even.
I wonder when people will realise it's not on Netflix, because it's been, 3 years now, and it's still the go-to. Anyway, Wales draw with Armenia. I mean, we're not a Wales podcast, but always, Tomi, disappointing. I mean, just so frustrating when, did the hard work of beating Croatia, and then, again, not just not getting the result, but just the man of the performance, really.
Yeah, I was able to catch a large part of the first half, so I didn't see any of it after that, but it does sound like a really disappointing one. Obviously, the result isn't good enough. Again, it's like, it's almost like Wrexham, isn't it? Done so well over the last, few games. That's just knocked us backwards. So, but, it's also like a nice little throwback to the good old days of Wales and Wrexham letting you down on weekends. So yeah, at least there's that.
Yeah, it feels very familiar, doesn't it? I mean, also, Liam, there's a possible transfer update, is there not? Luke Armstrong from Harrogate, who we were linked to in the summer, there was another story out on the weekend, not linking him with us, but just that he may have played his last game for Harrogate. Is that right?
Yeah, manager Simon Weaver's basically confirmed that moving forward, he's going to prioritise game time for, quote, players who are going to be available from January onwards. So that pretty much bluntly points to the fact that Luke Armstrong will not be with Harrogate from January. Now, there's a lot of speculation that we're sort of duty or honour bound, should we say, to go back in from January. I don't know how much I chime with that, but I suspect that, with players out, etc., it's probably something we need. It's just the fee I balk a bit I don't really fancy spending $500,000 on a player who's got 6 months left on his deal, but we'll no doubt see how that one goes when the window opens.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see us make a couple of moves in January anyway. But we'll see where we are. Quickly before our very special guest joins us this week, Wrexham women defeat in a very cold Swansea.com stadium. I don't think if you guys watched it, I don't think we can have any arguments. I thought they were by far the better side. Disappointed, obviously, having gone 1-0 up, but you could see that the team missed Rosie Hughes. Strikers are too isolated, and to be fair to Swansea, they had a couple of quality players, especially in the sort of attacking midfield and up the wings. So that was disappointing. So this is a very negative podcast so far. So let's try and liven up a little bit now with a guest. I'll admit him in from the waiting room.
That's very good of you.
That's very good of me. And he will have to turn on his mic and his camera. So we try to make this as difficult as possible, as a hostile an environment as we possibly can to our guests. Here he is. Today's guest. Good, thank you. Today's guest came through the youth system at Wrexham, made his first team debut in January 2006 against Rushton and Diamonds, in which he and his brother became the 7th pair of brothers to represent Wrexham. An industrious, red-headed striker, represented Wales at under 17, under 19 and under 21 level, as well as scoring 17 goals for Wrexham. And Dean Saunders compared him in passing once to Thierry Henry. Please welcome Marc Williams. How are you?
How are we? Good evening.
Yeah, we're very well, thank you. Well, we're quite well. It's been quite a depressing podcast so far because we've had 2 defeats this weekend, obviously, for Wrexham men and women, and then Wales as well. Which was disappointing, but
we've just lost last minute as well, Carnarvon. So it's a bad weekend all around.
Oh man, this is grim. Okay, well let's try and liven things up a little bit. First of all, answer a question for us because the internet gives us 3 different answers. Where did you grow up? Was it Llandudno, Colwyn Bay, or Penmaen Mawr?
Well, if we're going on stats, I had 17 goals for Wrexham. It was a little bit more than that. The cup goals aren't in there.
Sorry.
I'll let them off, though.
No, tell us how many. Set the record straight.
I'm not too sure how many, but I remember that particular season under Saunders, I scored 17. So I know there's 17 in the one season.
Okay.
And then a couple here and there. So I think the 20-odd or so, but... I don't think the FA VARs and things aren't on Wikipedia. So,
well, they should be.
I might try and change it.
Where did you grow up, Marc?
I grew up I was born in Bangor. I actually grew up in Penmaen Mawr. So till the age of 7 or 8, it was in Penmaen Mawr, and then we moved to Rhys-on-Sea. But yeah, a lot of people, because I played for Colwyn Bay Arabs through obviously I signed for Wrexham Academy, but it was always Colwyn Bay. And then because when I came out, went to part-time football after Chester, it was Colwyn Bay, but then I played a lot of time at Llandudno. So people think I'm a Llandudno lad. I live in Llandudno now. Other people think I'm from Colwyn Bay. But yeah, I actually grew up in Penmaen Mawr.
Okay. Just a North Wales utility player, really, just all over. How old were you when you joined the youth system then, and sort of who were the big influences there when you were there?
I would say, I think I went to the academy I was around 8 years old, and at the time it was, I'm trying to think. I think Steve Weaver played the part. Mike Buxton was academy. He ran the academy as such, and it was Steve Weaver. And interesting looking back, I had coaches like Hugh Griffiths, who obviously went on to Kevin Druids and Carnarvon, Steve Cooper, who's now in the Premier League. So it was from the age of 8, I got scouted, and that's where the journey began.
Yeah, proper grounding. Was Joey around a lot, Joey Jones?
I mean, Joey, obviously, being from Llandudno, I knew a lot about Joey as well. But I think Joey, in terms of my academy days, it wasn't really until I was 15, 16 where, the influence of Joey came in, because all of a sudden I used to get day release. It sounds bad, that, doesn't it? A day release. But day release from school, and obviously my brother was already a YT, so it was quite nice. I'd go and train with the youth team, and then be around the first years and second years. So, and that's where then obviously I met Joey and then he played a pivotal part over the next 2 or 3 years.
You mentioned your brother Mike there. So obviously when you were given your debut, you were only 17, so pretty young. But your brother was on the pitch. I mean, did that help?
Yeah, I think obviously having the older brother helped always throughout, because for me as a young lad, I mean, we were always in the garden, in the playground. I was always playing years above. So in year 3, I'm playing with year 5, year 6s, and the same happened in high school. And once we moved to Colwyn Bay, I always played in Mike's team. So I always played a year. Well, he's 18 then, so I always played 2 years above almost. And I think that helped my development. So then a case of then when it came to, I was in the under 16s, Mike was a YTS. I was then playing with the 17s with Mike. And then it was a case of in the reserves. And then all of a sudden you're in the first team. So I think having Mike there always helped me. It certainly helped me as a YTS. I mean, it's different now, and I know it's different from going into football clubs. But when you go in as a YTS, you really have to learn your trade, and there's lots of things that go on. And having Mike as an older brother the year above certainly helped. When there's lights out and the lights go out, you all get your towels, and it's basically let's beat the year ones up. But listen, it's all part of it. It really is, and it's not there today for obvious reasons. But I think having Mike helped. It's almost like I had someone having my back. I don't think they went as light though. There's a couple of players that probably thought, listen, we'll give his little brother a beating, but it was all part of it, and it was great fun, to be honest.
I was going to say, did you grow up in a Ray Winstone movie, mate? What's that?
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in, as I obviously remember. I think you're a couple of years younger than me, but I remember you coming through the ranks, and that season where you were on fire, weren't you? First season in the National League, and got into the Wales under 21s, mate. Played with some massive names who've had brilliant careers. What was that like?
Do you know what? I mean, I probably, I relive it most days with the job I do now. But I say that particular year, I'll be honest, there's nothing that's come close to it. And I say if I could relive a year, it'd be that year of my life. It was like you're flying around the world. I mean, we're in Budapest for a qualifier. You're off to Italy, and it's like, you've got Gareth Bale, Ramsey, Joe Allen, and it became the normal because they're your teammates. So I never once was in the change room thinking, what am I doing here? It was kind of like, wow, they're already in the Championship. Joe Allen had actually come out on loan, hadn't he, to us? So I knew Joe well anyway, even though it was a short spell and he got injured. But I always got on with Joe, and then kind of you go away with Wales, and it just gave you that feeling of, I want this so much to move up it. And it made me a better player. And I think with that, then it was the obviously Dean Saunders came in and turned me from a number 10 that linked up the play to, he just got in my head about goals, and he turned me that year into a goal scorer, and as well as the linking up the play. And that's when all of a sudden people start to think, wow, we've got a player here. Because goals people talk about, you look at Paul Mullin, don't you? All round play is good, people working hard is great. When you score goals, it wins matches. So, and that's certainly that year, everything seemed to come off until, unfortunately, the injury.
Yeah, I was just going to get onto that now, mate. I mean, unfortunately, after being on fire, banging in the goals, playing your best football, you had that injury, and that just I don't know if derail's the wrong word, but it really it impacted you, mate, didn't it? That was tough.
Yeah, it was difficult at the time. I mean, you don't realise how one injury, looking back now, it's easy to look at it all, but that injury, you think, wow, it couldn't have been at the worst time. 4 weeks prior to that, obviously, I'd sat with Dean Saunders. It was a case of staying at Wrexham or moving on. There was lots of offers from higher clubs, and from a young lad, my dreams were to play higher. So the chance was there in that January to actually leave. My agent ringing me, he's throwing Championship clubs, League One clubs at the time. And I think, that's probably the best I've ever played that particular year. My dad always used to say, when Marc's on it, it's like he's 6'6". I'm actually 5'10". But honestly, that year I felt unstoppable. I've never been the quickest, but I felt sharp. I felt I could run all day. I felt like we're not winning. I need to do something. I turned it up a gear and yeah, it went for me. And then the injury happened. And then obviously I had to come back from that. And I remember that pre-season, the first game back was Coventry. We drew 1-1. Keeper came out, and Neil Taylor it was actually. He rolled it across, and I had to just tap it into an empty net. And it was like, there we go. We drew 1-1. Normal service resumed almost. And Tuesday night we played Preston, and I rolled my ankle ligaments on the foot that I broke, and I missed that whole pre-season. And then it was a fight. It was like Dean Saunders go, got to be fit for Eastbourne first game. So I basically didn't do anything until the Friday before that Eastbourne game. And I was on the bench against Eastbourne. Wasn't fit enough. Hadn't kicked the ball. He put me on, I think, for 20 minutes. And I remember, it's weird how you remember moments because goals just change everything. I remember having a good chance and it just whistled past the post. We won 3-0, I think, on the day. And I look at that, I think, imagine that went in. My mind might have just completely changed. Didn't go in. Trying to get fitness, just couldn't get that fitness. I wasn't really playing in and out the team, didn't score. Then I got injured again, and then obviously I had my second break. So within of nearly leaving, and I didn't want to leave because I was only 20 as well. It's almost like we're second in the league with 2 points off. I want to play this part, which I was playing at the time to get Wrexham promoted. And I think being a kid growing up through the academy, the fans, the way they were with me that year, it was like, no, I couldn't leave, even though it was conference football. It was all I wanted to do was get them back in the Football League. And that year I thought, and Saunders said, Mark, I'll take you high. You've got your rest of your career. I'll sit here tonight. The 15 years has gone like that. And obviously from the injuries and what happened, it escalated out of control to the point I started gambling.
Yeah, I mean, so probably come on to that in a bit, Mark, but I just wanted to go back to obviously Brian Little leaving and Saunders coming in, and a lot of fans, myself included, sort of look back at Saunders' time as a bit sort of up and down. But I mean, clearly he was great for you because he believed in you, didn't he?
The first year he was. In the end, I mean, I actually returned back to the racecourse last Saturday, and the announcer said something regarding the negative side of it, unfortunately, and I am public with it. In the end, he wasn't great, and it was like I was a nobody. I'd gone from this person that was first on his team sheet, and he told me that, and he did everything. I mean, we had moments, and for me, if you think I'm 20 years old, I remember scoring the winner at Stevenage 2-1. Michael Proctor played in the Premier League for Sunderland, and he's come on the coach, Saunders. And he was such a joker. Everyone talks about that. But there was a certain few players that was just getting a bit pushed out. I think Sam Aston was in that, Tom Kearney, Proctor was amongst that. Me and Jeff Louis were starting. Sufo was on the bench. I was almost like feeling he was pushing these lads out. If you weren't in his plans, you felt it. And I mean, this story, it was fine for me at this point because I was obviously his number one, and he walked to the back of the bus with a couple of beers, and he walked around as he did with his swagger, and he actually came to me and Proctor, and he went to give it. Proctor went, no, not for you, and he'd been on the bench, Proctor. And I'm looking at him thinking, I'm looking up to Proctor. He's come, he kept us up the 2 years prior, the goal at Shrewsbury. I was obviously watching. I was on the bench. I was a young lad. And, I'm learning off him every day. And then all of a sudden, no, not for you. You're not my man. And he gave me a beer and he was like, there you go. You're my main man. And just walked back to the front. And at the time, for me, at 20, I'm thinking, oh, my God, the manager loves me. And I'm just there with a bottle of beer at the back of the grate. I never once at that point thought, how does Michael Proctor feel? Because it was Michael Proctor. But I look back now and I think, wow, them little moments, I then felt almost year and a half later, and it got to the point where it got really bad, and I hated being at Wrexham. It was so lonely. I didn't want to go in, and that's where the gambling escalated even more, because it was easier to gamble because I felt comfort there than it was to deal with how I was being treated at the club. And that was hard because it was the club I loved. I grew up at Wrexham. I'd supported them my whole life all the way through, and all of a sudden I felt like I wasn't wanted.
Is that where the gambling started, mate?
I wouldn't say it in terms of it escalated then. I grew up around it. I mean, being in North Wales from Llandudno, I mean, there's an arcade everywhere you go, isn't there? So we kind of, you know, as a family, we'd always been arcades. Me and Mike would always be in an arcade. I always loved that anyway. We always played bingo. We had like family traditions, Grand National, scratch cards at Christmas. I mean, who has a scratch card at 8 on the top of their stocking? But, you know, and I loved it. I loved it from a young age. It was fun. It was enjoyable. Then as a YTS, I mean, leaving school and walking into that Colliers Park, everyone was just doing it. The environment was, you can see why, you know, so many people gamble, because, you know, certainly athletes, most people were. And you kind of do it as a bit of you want to be part of something, you want to be sociable. YTs, we used to go to the bookmakers most days and put bets on. First team were doing it, the horses would be on. And when you do get called up to the first team, you know, it's playing cards at the back of the bus. And again, you want to be accepted, so you almost join in. But again, all that up until that point, it was always fun, it was enjoyable, it was something I enjoyed doing. I think once the injuries came, I didn't leave. And I think that always sat with me. I had a real opportunity to leave and play higher. And then you don't quite know the next bit. And then the injury was really difficult to deal with at the wrong time. Then the second injury, then almost being casted out. And then I always had enjoyed gambling, but now it got to a point where I just gambled more and more. And then that's where it then escalated.
Mark, we had a question in from one of our listeners, Gareth Collins, which probably ties in quite well here. He asks, was the club aware of your struggles at the time, and was there sort of anyone there to help you at the time?
No. I think what had started to happen was, I think people must have thought I was quite reactive. When I was gambling heavily, it got to a point where my behaviour changed, my personality changed. So I became quite reactive on the training ground. I'd say what I'd think because nothing else bothered me. I kind of didn't want to be there, so I kind of wanted to get out of there. So I think players in the end, I mean, it'd be interesting if we asked people. I think people would have a negative, you know, opinion of me back then. So it could be a case of, it was hard work or he was this. And I remember the way it was going. I remember sitting in the change room and someone was saying something about Dean Saunders, because we lived under almost like this. It was almost like control. I mean, he used to come in at 5 o'clock and do the groundsman's job and then tell the groundsman, this is how you need to do it. I mean, he's not a groundsman. That's what I love now. The groundsman, Charlie, who's on the documentary, and you know, he's doing great things for the club. I think, you know, there's times he was treated just like I was, like you're a nobody, like you're below people. I mean, no one's below anyone. And that's the feeling, unfortunately, whether being at the top did that at times. Like watching stuff like that was bad. So it was almost like, Mark's a nightmare, basically. And I remember saying, I said, Saunders isn't nice, is this, is that, and someone had reported it back. And it basically was, I won't really play again, and I didn't. And he made everything he had in his power to really that I didn't go on that pitch. I actually scored 2 back-to-back hat-tricks, and he still found it difficult to play me or give me a chance. So anything I'd done in that perfect year, it was almost like it was forgotten. But no one saw it. I would say the physio Rhys and the fitness coach Mal, they saw a young lad who clearly wasn't where he was, but they didn't know why. But they worked so hard to try and get me fit, and, you know, credit to them. So I speak to Rhys. I speak to both, actually. And I've seen Rhys recently. He's around the Welsh leagues, and Rhys obviously tried to get me fit and wanted me back firing, and Mal worked really hard with me when he could, but they could see I was being pushed out, but you know, it kind of just happened that way.
Yeah, you sort of see I guess what you'd call like the light and shade of Dean Saunders there. Was there times when he was like more light-hearted, or was it quite often that on top of you type of thing?
I'd say for me, it was like, obviously that first year, it was like everything was perfect. So it was almost like, yeah, I couldn't do anything wrong. And then almost like once I got the injuries, more players came in. I mean, Mangi, Morel, Pogba, Spite, Danny Wright. It was almost like Toy Story. You know, I'm Woody now, aren't I? Getting just your Woody, you get over there. And yeah, did I get a light-hearted moment? Probably not. Probably not. I never once really had a conversation where he spoke and said, right, you fight. Like I said, I scored back-to-back hat-tricks in the reserves. I remember Frank Sinclair coming in one day after the reserves. He said, he's just scored the best hat-trick I think I've seen. And then you're thinking, right, go back in, get a buzz about you. Wasn't bothered. And then he had to put me on the bench. There was no one else. Great. So I'm getting in because of injuries and not because of my form. And he put me on against Fleetwood. We lost 1-0. And I played 18 minutes or so. And when I got on the coach, Ritson and Mal were buzzing because they thought, you're back. And Ritson actually gave me a high five. He said, you're back. You know, first appearance in ages it was. And I thought, this is it. Keep the form going. Week after, I just got left out. Didn't even get spoke to. And that's what it was like. It was difficult.
Sounds like quite a toxic environment, really.
It was, yeah. That year it was. And I remember, for me it was. I mean, other players might say, you know, Andy Mangan, you know, manager of Bristol, is it Bristol Rovers now? He used to go in for a cup of tea with Saunders every day, 9:30 in his office, as you do as the striker. He must have thought it was great, but I can't speak negative of that because I guess it's the same as him coming and giving me a beer instead of Michael Proctor. So I've been on both ends, you know, and it was great when I was, you know, every interview, it was like, I've got all the curtains actually. My mum moved house and I got everything out the attic for the first time in 10 years or so. And it's like, Mark's this, Mark, and you read it and you think, wow, he used to think that of me. And then I think at the end there, I think, wow, how it changed. It almost brought it all back. I remember being on the race course on a Thursday. I was in good form, and Wrexham we were losing a few games. We were in the playoffs, but we weren't in form. We was just still staying in there. It was the year we lost to Luton, and he had us all in a circle, and he goes, "Come on, we need to get back to it. You know, we're not doing this, we're not doing that." He said, "You know, I'm going to have to play Mark if it doesn't get any better." And I remember just being, honestly, I stood there and it was like, I can't believe he just said that. And one of the players who I barely even spoke to, he even looked at me and goes, is he really? And he got on really well with him. He said, I can't believe he's just said that. And I said, no, I can't. And he said, and he kind of seen it. And he said, are you all right? And I went, yeah. I said, I'm kind of used to it. And off I went, go home. And that's where I think, you know, when you talk about addiction and escapism and, you know, the only way I could escape feelings like that was gambling, because I guess I was in control of that and I'd lost control of my career because it was falling away.
I mean, it sounds awful, to be honest with you, mate. Like, I mean, it's very pointed, isn't it? Like it's, he's trying to make an impact almost, it sounds like, with those kinds of comments. I mean, you know, you've mentioned the gambling a couple of times. You know, thank you for being so open to talking about it, number one. Talk to us about, you know, how bad it got.
Yeah, well, from that year, and then I knew I had to leave. I played the last game of the calendar season against Luton. It was the reserves we were put out. We actually had a really good reserve side, you know, Lee Fowler. I think Johnny Hunt played left back, who obviously went on and played Football League. Maxi, I think, was in goal. Brownie, and we actually played some good stuff. We drew 1-1 with Luton on the day, and I got injured, and I had a really good game. It was my last Wrexham appearance, and in about the 75th minute, I landed on my right foot again. My ligaments went, and it was almost like, you know, I can't even play without even getting injured. So I knew I needed a fresh start. Saunders knew I was injured. You know, he knew I got taken off, and the physio said he's done his ligaments. And I remember I had to go in on the Sunday the next day, and he said, oh, I was going to play you Tuesday in the playoffs against Luton. You were brilliant yesterday. And I was like, but I'm injured. And he was like, oh, is it all right? I went, no, about 6 weeks, 8 weeks again. He went, oh, I was going to play you. It's like, you've not played me all season. And that was even a little kick in the, it was like, well, were you? Then my head's going, was I going to play if I didn't get injured? And anyway, I went to Kidderminster, but at that point, through that stage, the gambling, I think, had gone too far. So now I was gambling too much and I was losing too much money. And then I dropped money at Kidderminster. Then I had to fund the addiction, which where credit cards came in. And that's where, it took 6 months at Kidderminster and the manager pulled me. He didn't want me at the football club. He said, Mark, I want you to leave the club. You're causing problems, difficult to coach, etc. And yeah, I think that's where my personality changed. And that's hard when you look back now at 35. I think, I missed out on big moments or even moments to rectify my career. But my behaviour and attitude, my professionalism, it had changed. So and then it, from Kidderminster to Chester, it kind of just started, can I say that word on here? But it just started to, it kind of escalated out of control. And I'll be honest, I think I always had that reactive nature in me through that time as I was gambling. And it wasn't really until I went into recovery at 30, I thought, I've not only let a lot of managers down and teammates, but I've certainly let myself down how I was through my career.
We'll go back to talk about some more of the characters in the squad and your memories at Wrexham. But lastly, on this, just tell us about how you got out of the hole that you got into, because I'm sure there'll be people listening to this who might be in a really similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, I get messages all the time and phone calls to help people. So it's prevalent. A lot of people find themselves in this situation, even being at the ground last week. On a match day, there was a couple of people that approached me. So unfortunately, it's something that exists. But yeah, in terms of getting out of it, I mean, the best thing I did was, it was late. I was 30. It took me to hit my rock bottom, but it's getting the help and speaking and talking and going in support groups and getting counselling certainly has got me to where I am. But the power of talking was the main bit. And I look back and think, I could have spoke to someone maybe through my injuries, 22, 23, certainly 25 when, I'm starting losing large amounts of money and gamble more. And it shouldn't have taken me till I was 30. And that's why I do the work I do. You shouldn't have to hit that rock bottom. There's certainly moments where intervention can take place, and through education, I hope that happens. And that's why I like I say, I do what I do. But it is difficult because unfortunately we wait until there's no means, or you're at your worst, or there's no money left type thing, or you're in the worst, position you are with your mental health. And like I say, it should not get to that. Talking it is everything in it. And personally, I look back, I think it saved my life.
And tell us about what you do, Marc.
Just delivering, obviously, education and raising awareness to top athletes throughout the world, which is that I think I'd be here 5 years ago. Not in a chance. So it's almost like I've got a second shot at, I'm not on the pitch, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to play, obviously, football was everything I loved, but to have an impact in sport and football being a main part of that, with them top athletes and helping them and raising that awareness and making sure they don't make their mistakes, it gives me that purpose that I think I didn't have. I never felt enough. That year I felt enough. For whatever reason, that year, like I said at the start, it was everything and more, and the feeling of it was unbelievable. Away from that, I was always fighting something for my career, and it's hard. Professional sport's really difficult. It's cutthroat. I mean, I was telling someone last week, even I went from starting to on the bench to 17th man in 7 days, and not one word was said. And it's like your mind is going, what's happened? Did I play well enough then? I was pushed on the bench, and I'm not even involved now. And it's so difficult. And through that, you've got to just be so strong mentally. And I don't think I was. I don't think I had that. I was strong in some senses, but was so difficult. Like, I miss a chance, and all I'm thinking is like everyone's thinking, "Oh, he's missed that," and I'd overthink it, and it can be a dark place. But yeah, it's professional sport is tough.
Well, no, we're all very glad that you've managed to get that second wind, and it's great the work that you're doing. Back to that season, as you say, when you were really hard, going really well, you were on a real high. Your strike partner at one point was Jefferson Louis, wasn't it? Quite a character. We've got a listener question actually from Ben Williams, who said, "How much of a nutcase was Jeff Louis?" Not how I would have phrased the question, but tell us what he was like.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, it's weird because the story behind the actual next bit, because Jeff Louis left, didn't he? And Dean Saunders said to me, I've got you at number 9 from the Championship, which was Gaz Taylor. But we just, unfortunately, for whatever reason, not everyone has that connection, do they? As players, you know, and me and Jeff Louis, for whatever reason on that pitch, it just worked. We just like bounced off each other. He was scoring, I was scoring. We'd create, we'd have a little, and yeah, I think Dean Saunders at the time thought, listen, we'll get Gaz Taylor in. He's a better player than Jeff. It'll work better, and it didn't. But as a character, honestly, he was like nothing else. I remember we had a cup game, and he was starting. We were starting. We were in a services. And he's just, everyone's filling their bag, getting, you know, their pre-match, all these things. And he's just got 4 Cornettos in his bag. He's just going on like that. And he calls everyone bruv. And he does that to you. It's like you're a bird next to him. And he's going, hello. And that's just how he is. And he's like, bruv. He's doing all that. Anyway, he's walked on with these 4 Cornettos. And Saunders is inspecting everyone's bag at the front, but he hadn't done it before, so he's not expecting it. So everyone's getting the path. Next minute, he looks in Jeff Louis' bag. He goes, "You've got 4 Cornettos. We're playing in a minute." He goes, "Yeah, I'll be all right, bruv. This is the Dean Saunders." And it's like, you can't have 4 Cornettos, Jeff. He's like, "I'll be sound." And we're howling. Anyway, went to the back of it. He goes, "You're not having 4 Cornettos before this game." He said, anyway, he sat at the back of the bus eating these Cornettos. Anyway, Saunders put him on the bench. That's what but Jeff just honestly lived in a different world. It was like, but it was so refreshing, and he was so friendly. He was the nicest guy around the football club. He was brilliant, but some of the stuff was brilliant. He just thought he was brilliant, even if he was bad. Because with Jeff, I mean, you probably remember goals like the Eastbourne goal. Obviously, I remember. I've seen my hat tricks on the reel, so I watched that, and he's just turned and put it in top bins, and that's Jeff. He'd score worldies. Next minute, it would bounce off him, and he'd give the ball away, he'd kick out of play. So it was like 1 minute he'd be almost Maradona, the next he'd be like Madonna. It's just like you didn't know what you were getting off him. But I remember that Stevenage game, we won 2-1, and he scored first half, and he wasn't great second half. It was bouncing off him, and then obviously I nicked the winner with 8 minutes to go. Celebrate with the Wrexham fans. Great day, 2-1, and we've gone in, and Dean Saunders has hammered him, and I've never seen a bollocking like it. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, was he that bad to warrant that? But I do think Dean Saunders found it easy to bollock Jeff that year. He was almost the easy one. And he just kind of like, he just used to almost take it. But he'd never really say it back. He just made that noise going. Yeah. And you knew he just wasn't happy. You knew he wasn't happy. Anyway.
Just lick his Cornettos and move on.
Yeah. He gave him the biggest bollocking ever. Oh, and he's walked out. We went to one anyway. He's hammered him, and the whole room went silent. And as Saunders left, he sat there. He just went, "I thought I was decent today." And we looked at him, and he was like, "I was like Berbatov, bruv." And he just, and he's just had the biggest bollock. And he went, "I was like Berbatov, bruv." And he genuinely thought that. And I said, he just had confidence. He was great to be around, though. It was brilliant. But he's just had the big, like for me. And I think that in itself, I think, shows you different in mentality. If Saunders had done that to me, I would have got curled up. I'd have sat there. I wouldn't have said a word. I thought, oh my God, was I that bad? And as soon as he walked out, that was Berbatov, mate. He's a good lad, yeah.
Brilliant.
But only we could all have one of Jefferson Louis' Cornettos in it. Yes, that might be the key, mightn't it, to happiness?
Yeah.
Oh, on this podcast, we always do what we call like a fearless moment. It's the moment that filled you with the most pride when you were playing for Wrexham. Is there anything that comes to mind immediately when you think about
that? I've got a couple, I think. I think as obviously the debut, I think, is a big one because I was, like you said at the start, 17, young. Mike was playing, family being there, and it's always that big moment. You've made that start. I mean, you work so hard from a young lad, and when you become a YTS, being a youth team player, you're looking over, aren't you, to the first team? It's like you want to get over. They're on a different pitch. And you're looking over that pitch thinking, and when you get that call, and as a first year, you needed for a practice match. Mark, Donny, Carrots come over, they're all going over to the first team. So intimidating. So that moment, I think, of making your debut, and I had trained a few times for the first team, but I weren't regular. And then on the Friday, Mark go over, and I was in the 11. I thought, looks like I'm starting tomorrow. I couldn't believe it. And then obviously I start. So then that moment of representing the club, your first appearance, the fact Mike was playing as well, added to it. Then personally, again, I think the hat trick will always be a moment because I think at that point was at the top of my game, just before the transfer window. I think it was the 20th of December. You're probably thinking I remember all the scores and dates and everything. That's how sad I am, but. And I just think that third goal in the 91st minute, again, I felt unstoppable. I'm going to run with this. I'm going to score the hat trick, and I just went with it. And that moment of this is unbelievable. This is like I'm on top of the world right now. I remember going to get the man of the match, champagne, and I walked through Wrexham. It was weird being there 2 weeks ago, walking on the same path, 15 years on. I remember the chairman at the time basically coming out of a closet, and he had an extra 150 because I weren't on major money at that point. It was I signed my new contract in the January, which bumped me up, but he put £150 in my hand out of this closet. So I've just got this dangling hand and 150 in there. So I'm going, he's like, you don't go anywhere. Dino will look after you. So I'm going to get the man and that champagne, and now I've got cash in my hand. And you know what everyone's like when you've got time. I'm thinking, I'm looking at it thinking, how much is in this now? I want to count this, but I can't count it because the chairman's still here. All I want to do is count the money. But that hat trick, that was a great moment because it was at the pivotal, I think, of that year. And then obviously winning 2-1 at Mansfield, and me and Mike brothers both scoring, which I don't know what the record or how long it was until the brothers, but that was another nice moment. But it was. I look at that whole year, to be honest, and it all, like I sent some photos to the documentary team, and there's a picture with all the trophies at the end of the year, and I thought, wow, it must have been a good year to have won all them. And it's sad at the time how quick it can change, but then I think at 35 now I've accepted, wow, that actually did happen, and take the positive from it.
Yeah, just bringing that up to sort of present day. I spoke to you before we did this about recently coming back to the club in your work role, and I think to a game after that. What was that like, and what were your thoughts of Wrexham as a football club before that, and have they changed now?
In terms of before the role, no, because I'm obviously watching the documentary, and I've almost just become that fan again that I was as a kid. And when I watch it, it's like I can see it. The community base has always been there for Wrexham, even when I was there. And I said it the other day when I was there on Saturday, don't forget the fans that saved the club when, we had the day you had to get £100,000. And I was there at the time, and it was like, we need to get the players' wages, we need to do this, we need to save the club. And, we're getting stories that fans are putting their wedding fund. I mean, I don't know what the missus thought of that. Putting savings away, and the passion and what is in Wrexham is always been there. It's not because, Ryan Reynolds and Rob coming in has just really helped everything. It's just almost, it's like being a fire and they've just been able to ignite the fire. The fire's always been burning. And now, like with that, it's just added because they needed that little bit of guidance and help, a bit of the financial back, and you put it all together. But, like I say, it's such a passionate town, but you felt like when you played. So, and that's why I think it was difficult to leave when I said, because I wanted to be a part of that, and I loved playing under it. But when I left initially, and I've said this, and I don't mean it in a bad way, and I don't think it was anything to do with Wrexham. It was more individuals, but I hated Wrexham when I left. When I left and went to Kidderminster, it's sad because from the age of 8, all I knew was Wrexham, all the way to 23, and from 21 to 23, I couldn't wait to get out of there. And it was my whole life for 15 years. And then it was like, I didn't want them to win. Even the year when I got injured on the Saturday, I didn't want them to win the playoffs. And it's like, that sounds really bad, but that's where I think I was really in a bad place mentally. And it took, I think, going away, doing my own thing, I guess, and then really going into recovery, accepting a lot. And then it's nice now that I've just been able to do full turn. I watched the documentary, I love it. Being back at Wrexham, taking Emily, my little girl, last Saturday as a fan. Yeah, I look, it's the weirdest emotion because you're looking at where the hat-trick took place. My goal at Lincoln and the injury. Honestly, I'm watching a match, but there's so much more. And I've just got my little girl with me, and that's 15 years on. That's memories, isn't it? It's there, that won't go. But yeah, I think seeing the club, the players were brilliant. But I thought that anyway, watching the documentary. I think they're really, the way they talk, the way they are about the club, the passion. But the players in this session, the questions they asked, a few came to me after, and the way they spoke. Obviously, they've left testimonials, brilliant. And I look and I think, fair play, it's that they get it. They get it. And the truth is, I think I played with players at Wrexham that didn't get it and didn't understand it, yet they were treated better. So it's nice now that there's a good core set of players who really care about the club and want to drive it in the right direction.
Just moving on to, obviously you're playing for Carnarvon now, mate. You've been, in the Welsh leagues for a number of years. I've seen you for Llandudno and stuff like that. And what's it like playing in front of the Covey Army? And, in terms of Welsh football, their fan base is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's probably the closest you relate to Wrexham. I think when I say they're about passion and really proud, and Carnarvon's the same. So it's probably being at Carnarvon's the next best thing, I think, out in terms of part-time football. You can go to TNS, but there's 200 fans. There's no buzz, there's no nothing. And going to Carnarvon this year is almost, I'm 35 now. You hit that point, you think, I'm traveling everywhere, I'm doing this, I'm running around. At what point do you call it? But honestly, when you're playing there, and I mean, you win a header, you make a tackle, and you get a big eruption and buzz. That I've always thrived off that. So yeah, I love playing under that, and that's when I sit in the race course and listen to the noise, I can't help but think, imagine being on that pitch. I'd love it. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. Didn't enjoy obviously losing 3-2 today. Again, that's football. I won't go into the officials. I'll let you do your homework. But no, it's very similar. You've got very passionate people who love football clubs, and isn't that that's what football's all about? And that's why teams like Wrexham, Carnarvon, you get real fan bases, don't you? It's not sofa fans. It's not people, I support them and don't really follow. They, look at the following Wrexham have. It's unbelievable.
And there's a few ex-Reds there as well, mate. I mean, not from your time, but just had a question from Wonderboy. How are the ex-Reds, Austin, Lloyd and Cartwright getting on? I mean, Ryan Austin, unfortunately, is injured at the moment, isn't he? But how are the others getting on?
Yeah, Ryan Austin, like I say, unfortunately injured, nasty injury as well, actually. But before that, had been brilliant, really good. I think probably too good for Welsh Prem. But again, it's it's so difficult, I think, with everything that's going on at Wrexham, because they can pick maybe who they can get. It's probably going to be more difficult for a young player to come through now, maybe. You look at Max Cleworth, played a lot in the last previous seasons, not much at the minute. And so, yeah, he's obviously dropped down a level, but yeah, before the injury was excellent. Ewan Cartwright, ever present, been really good, was brilliant today, actually. Really good footballer again. I think a bit of a story with Ewan. I think he got told he weren't at the club through Twitter. Yeah, so we found out things like that. And there's just things in the past that I don't think Wrexham have been great at. And I hope moving forward they're better. And Louis Lloyd, really good footballer, scored today again. I think probably better than Welsh Premier. Not disregarding the Welsh Prem, but these are young lads that have got something that hopefully they can find themselves back in full-time football, because that's where as young lads they want to be. And you players like Louis Lloyd, they're young lads. We finish training. I mean, I've worked all day. I've got to train, and I'm thinking, right, I'll get my 2 hours in. 9 o'clock, them lot are doing extra, shooting, heading, running. I'm thinking, I'm getting in my car because I've got to get up in the morning. But they're hard-working lads, and I hope they can show what they've got in the Welsh Prem and maybe get that shot. But know that 3 great lads. All doing well at the moment. Obviously, bar Ryan's injury, unfortunately.
Yeah, just another listener question, mate, from Adam Harvey. Going back to the gambling thing, really. But what would you say to youngsters now coming through, and trying to help them avoid the path that unfortunately you went down when you were a young lad? And what does prevention look like?
I'd say, we do a lot. In terms of, we have a gambling spectrum, so it kind of goes from occasional gambler, regular gambler, heavy gambler, into then a disordered gambler, and you're going from left to right. It's basically when it's fun, when it's social, when it's enjoyable, which I said it was for me all the way till probably the injury. And then it can take anything at that point. So whether it's injury, athletes are under obviously extreme vulnerability anyway, from injuries to criticism to, escapism because of the pressures they're under, the competitive nature we've got. So it's it's understanding your own, it's always looking at your own relationship with gambling. I look back now and I know I can look back when I was a regular gambler. I can see when it turned heavy, and I can see the difference to when it went disordered. And I could, if I sat with you and said what happened on each thing, I can see moments and reasons why I turned almost through the spectrum. So it's so important that you keep checking in. Are you spending more than you can afford? Are you chasing losses? Are you basically being consumed by it? When it gets to a point where nothing else matters, that's where it's taken over your life. Whether that's, I didn't want to play football. I used to be in the changing room gambling on my phone at half time and didn't want to be there. I love football. And now with, this lens on, I think, how did I waste that? I can't believe that. It's the hardest bit. That's the regret. So when you start, neglecting family members, not wanting to be there, wanting to isolate yourself, that's when a problem's occurring. So prevention's massive. You'll know when something's not quite right, but I think the hardest part is breaking down that stigma for people to be, right, I need to talk to someone. That's the hardest bit, because it is embarrassing, it's shameful. You've lost a large amount of money, you're doing things, you've become a liar. And I used to lock the bathroom and spin the roulette in the bathroom for losing thousands, and come downstairs as if nothing had happened. I used to lie about my whereabouts. You do everything to gamble, and you almost live a double life. So you will know if you're on the wrong end of that spectrum. But to get that prevention, it's just so important that you talk and speak to someone. I think we are getting somewhere. I think because of what's going on, certainly in football, we're hearing it more and more, aren't we, with different things in the Premier League, Championship. People are talking about it, which is now, I think, people are opening up more, and we're just getting away from that macho man culture. I grew up in it. It was horrible. You just dealt with it. Anything that went on, deal with it. You couldn't almost speak about your emotions as a man. And now I think we're just breaking that down a bit, because unfortunately life isn't easy, is it? And we get thrown things where forget sport, it could be personal, it could be breakups, it could be grief. And all them things can really impact our mental health. So important that we talk. And like I said, at the age of 30, talking, it helped my life. But yes, it didn't save my football career, but it saved my next part. And I'm so grateful now that I can impact the game that I love the most.
Good man. Let's do the quick fire round. Andy Gilpin, who usually does this, is not here, so bear with me. But basically, first thing that comes into your head, a quick number of quick fire questions. Question number 1 to you, Mark. Who was the most skillful player during your time at Wrexham of your teammates?
Bloody hell. Skillful. Oh, it's really difficult, and I know it's quick fire. I'll go. Carlos Edwards.
Nice. Yeah. Good answer. Who was the worst dressed?
Worst dressed? He'll hate me for saying this. Gaz Evans.
Excellent. Who do you think was the most underrated from your time? Who didn't get the plaudits they deserved, perhaps from the fans?
Oh, from the fans?
Or from manager, whatever you wanted to do.
Is it supposed to be quicker than this? It's really. I am thinking 15 years back.
That's all right. You could take your time. Some people have give us very long answers, and it turns into a very long. Actually, Ryan Reynolds was like that. He was terrible at the quick fire, so you're in good company.
Oh, because I'm just trying to. Good one actually, John Walters, and again it was worked his balls off, didn't score many goals, and I remember Dennis Smith offering him a really not a great contract, and he was like, "No, I'm better than that." And he wanted Lee McKevley because he scored goals. He offered him more. And John Walters left, and obviously went to Chester. 2 good games against Roy Keane's Ipswich. He was in the Championship, and that's football, I guess. So he worked. I made my debut with John, but he did used to work so hard. And yeah, I guess he wasn't appreciated for that because he didn't score enough.
Lastly, who is the player that you would least like to fight?
Ashley Westwood. I genuinely think he'd probably bite me. He's just even though he's a short man, I wouldn't say lad. I mean, he came in as captain, didn't he? But he was tough. He was hard as nails, and he would. I mean, it was great set pieces for him. And Mike used to have a good thing. They used to score quite a few, but he was just hard, and he'd always get. If there was anything kicking off in the tunnel or in the dressing room or from dressing room to dressing room, he'd be at the front of it, and you could just see him. I used to see you could just see like his mouth, the saliva. I thought I wouldn't like to be on the end of an Ashley Westwood uppercut. No.
What about Lee McKevley? Lee McKevley looked like a bad net as well.
Lee McKevley would. Do you know what? He was just a really nice lad. I did. It was good actually. I did Lee McKevley's boots as I was a second year, and I did another one actually with Westwood centre half again. Dave Bayliss. I used to do Bayliss's boots as a first year. He used to have Copa Mondial, just black centre half. And he paid me every week, and he said, "If I score, I'll give you." So he didn't bloody score, did he? So I didn't get the big amount. And then Lee McKevley used to give me these flashy boots, and he used to say, "Right, I'll give you." Basically, it was like £20 a win and £10 a goal or something. And as a YTS, you used to get like £66 as a first year, £90 as a second year. But I was cleaning Lee McKevley's boots. He scored 2. They'd won. And it's like an extra, 40 quid. And to me at the time, I was like, oh, God. So you watch it. And things like that, they've stopped it now. But things like that are really good because not only you're watching the first team, you're building that rapport as well. For me, it was like Lee. All right, so Dave Baylor sometimes would come in and throw the boots in the corner, sort them out. But Lee McKevley would be like, sort these out, and then he'd score, and he'd be like, you're building that, rapport with him. Almost 6 months later, I'm playing in the same team. So yeah, it was good, but he was a good lad with it, and yeah, I think things like that are important, but. I wouldn't like to be on the end of a Lee McKevley uppercut.
No. No, I don't think you're alone there. Mark, thank you very much for your time. Do you want to stick with us for 5 minutes to do predictions, or are you stuck for time?
No, that's fine, yeah.
You're a gentleman. Thank you very much. Before we move on to predictions, Liam, I think you wanted to mention a fundraiser, didn't you?
Yeah, so someone else doing some good work in the community at the moment is Mr. Ollie Palmer. He's currently a champion for Hope House Children's Hospices, who've got a campaign called Final Moments Matter, and it's basically to fund end-of-life care for children. So Ollie's currently got a fundraising page, which is charityextra.com/final moments matter/Palmer. And every pound raised will be matched. And he's also auctioning off one of his shirts and one of Mullin's shirts in a frame, both signed, which is currently going for, I've just got it up now, £2,000. Yeah, pretty decent stuff.
Decent stuff. Please dig deep for that, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great cause. But yeah, as promised, time for predictions. Tomi, if I come to you first, Wrexham have got Morecambe on Saturday, no midweek games, just the one game this week at home. Do you reckon we'll bounce back?
Yeah, I do, mate. I do. I can't see us following. Well, we certainly can't be as bad as what we were yesterday. So yeah, I'm going to go nice, comfortable one. I'm going to go 2-0, I think.
Nice.
Double.
Liam?
Yeah, I always fancy us at home. Our form is rudely good. So I think I'll go for a nice 3-1 win.
All right, I'll bring the negativity back into the podcast. I'm gonna say that we're gonna have a little mini slump, just a couple of games. So I reckon we'll struggle. We'll limp to a 1-1 draw on Saturday. Mark, what do you reckon?
Oh, well, after watching them, I obviously weren't there yesterday, so I don't know what fully went on. But after seeing them at home, 2-0, Gillingham played some good football as well. So I fancy them at home with the crowd. I'm going to go for a big 4-0.
Whoa, there we go. Brilliant. Love that from Mark. And Mark, thank you very much for your time.
Marc Williams hat-trick.
Marc Williams hat-trick.
Jefferson Louis with the Cornettos after well.
With the Cornettos, yeah. Ashley Westwood with the headbutt.
Mark, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it and appreciate you being so open as well. Thank you very much. And to all the listeners, you know where to get in touch with us. Thanks for listening and watching and doing everything else. And goodbye.
Thank you.
Superb.